Hey friends, Stephanie here with SKU'd Imaging. I'm doing a tutorial today on this paracord wrist lanyard. The original tutorial I found is from Paracord Guild. I'll have that linked in the video description below. So I'm going to do this video in two parts because it's a little bit time consuming to watch a whole video, but also I wanted to make this decorative knot a standalone video in case you wanted to reference that and not have to watch the whole entire video for the whole piece. So this video is just going to be how to make that wrist strap, and the things that you'll need to start with that. I use 4.5 feet of 2 different cords. I often will do 2 colors just to make the braiding process a little bit easier so you know which cord is which. So I have a 4.5 foot cord of Green Mesa and 4.5 of moss green. I'll also be using a measuring tape, a lacing needle, some scissors, a lighter, and then I have a Marlin spike. I'm not actually going to be using it for tightening, but I love it for this little piece on the end. Use it kind of as a spacer for that little loop at the top there. So we'll jump into that. All right, so to start, I start with the cord that I'm going to have for the loop on the top. This one has olive drab, runs all the way through the strap. So I start with that loop color. Of these 2 cords that I have here, I want that loop color to be the moss green. So this is where I would use the bottom of the Marlin spike just kind of as a spacer. Really for this I don't need it too much because I really just want to make sure I have a good sized loop that's left there. So at the middle of that moss green is where you're gonna place that spacer, and then you're gonna set the middle of your secondary cord right in the middle of that. So this loop lays right over itself right here with that moss green, and I just bring that Green Mesa over the top and just make sure that there's a good amount of space in there. I usually like to make sure that that spacer will fit, but while I'm braiding the next section it'll probably fall out, so I just kind of keep it out for the time being. So then from here you just start that 4-strand braid. The first few passes I keep it really loose because you're going to be back braiding through these last few sections here. So you're kind of just trading the places with that Green Mesa, and then you're trading the places of that moss green. This is probably like extra loose, but I do probably about, I call these little bumps, about 3 of these bumps that are kind of loose, and then right after that 3rd bump kind of tighten up that process a little bit more. So I just braid this out until about, probably going to aim for about 13.5 or 14 inches. So I'll speed this up and jump to that next step. Okay, so now that I've got that rope braided out, I like to kind of stretch it a little bit just to kind of make that rope a little bit more structured. And then this is where I like to measure that. So I kind of measure just the 4-strand braid where the bottom of those cords start to come out of that braid. And have about just about 14.5, just slightly under that probably. So that's okay for me. I'm just gonna make a little bit of a larger wrist lanyard this time. So I kind of find about the halfway mark of that braid. I'm going to be braiding through about the last 2 bumps here or so. So I kind of want to line that braid up alongside just about those last few bumps there. And finding that middle, just kind of bending that, forming its shape a little bit. This part gets a little bit tricky. This is where you're gonna need the lacing needle. And this is why it's a little more helpful to have 2 different colors on your lanyard, because you're gonna be lacing these 4 cords back into this braid here. So having 2 different colors helps you to recognize which ones you're gonna be starting with. Sometimes, to be honest, I don't always know exactly how I'm gonna line them all up. I kind of just focus on one cord and finding the natural place that one cord comes out where I want that cord to go in there. So the first one that draws attention to me is this Green Mesa here on the left. It kind of wants to come out and kind of follow that S-like pattern on the braid here. So I'm gonna just let it continue doing that. But instead of lining it up right here, I'm actually gonna lace that through just right underneath this green moss and right over to the other side here. So take that one particular cord, put your lacing needle on there, and I said I didn't want to go to that second bump just quite yet because that means I'm only going to have one cord laced through there. So I want to go up to that 3rd bump there, and I just want to push that right underneath that green moss and pull that through. This is why I wanted to leave that braid really loose to begin, and then you're following that same Green Mesa. You're kind of coming across and you're just following that cord back through to the other side. And I'm not trying to lace it through there super tight at the very moments. I will tighten that all up when I get all 4 cords laced in here, but I don't want to do it too soon. Watch out for where you're placing them in there, because you don't want to triple up one side and just have a single cord on the other. So I think I'm just going to lace it right up here at the top, so then it comes in on this side here. Then it won't interfere with this side that's doubled up. It'll come right over to the other side to balance that out. So pull out the other Green Mesa, set that lacing needle on there, and that one's already stitched in, so I'm just going to go up to that next green moss cord and stitch just right underneath there. And I'm going to go ahead and just double up the Green Mesa on this one too. They're all going to get doubled up eventually. I don't like to stitch the whole thing out the whole way through, and I don't like to do it very tight right away. If I tighten all those down, it's going to get harder and harder to lace the rest of the cords through there. And then the next one, I'm going to take this green moss cord. I want to line it up to this one here, but I want it to sit over the top of this Green Mesa, so I'm actually going to be kind of running it through on this side. So if I pull that cord through, I'll find that it really is going to want to kind of pair up to this other side here. So I'm kind of lacing this a little bit higher up than I originally planned, so sometimes I try to lace just like about 2 of these bumps, sometimes it's 3, and occasionally you'll get a conjoined area right about at the 4th bump instead. So just kind of go with the flow on it. I think that's really part of it when it comes to creating. But actually I'm going to just take that straight down here and line it up with this one, going underneath both of those Green Mesas. Make sure you get those twists out. It'll make for a little unstable braid later if you don't. I'll lace that green on that side to double up. And then I just have one last cord to run through the braid. And then again, this is where you kind of want to pay attention not to double up or triple up the wrong side of the braid there. So I'm going to pull this green cord out. It's the last one we have to lace in there. Since the other green one kind of came to this side, I assume I'm going to have a place to kind of line it up over on this side here instead. So you just kind of have to look at it back and forth a little bit to make sure you don't end up tripling up the cord. So I want to actually line it up so it pairs up with this one here, but I don't think I want to go ahead and put it down this one right away. So I'm going to actually kind of go through the back here to double it up, so it's actually going to connect right over here on this side. So what I'll do is push that through to the other side, where it'll lay a little bit nicer. And I'm going to stitch it just right through here underneath this Green Mesa. So set that needle again. And I'm not going down here because see, that's already been doubled up there and there. So I'm just going right above that one. And now that I have all 4 cords in there, I can kind of pull on this and form it a little bit more. I can also pull on those cords, pull some of the slack out that I have already. And then I'm just going to double up all the rest of it. So this cord is doubling up over here. Now as I double it up, I'm going to be tightening it a little bit more since I don't have to go back and lace anything back through. And I lace just until I kind of get toward the top here. But as you can see from when we started, this loop has gotten quite a bit smaller. I don't really want to lose a lot of that slack. So I'm going to put my spacer back in. I like to put it back on the actual Marlin spike just to have a little bit more leverage. I'm not super graceful with this. I should have put it in a little sooner. Okay. Yeah, so put that piece in a little sooner than I did. So it's really just to hold space for it so it doesn't get too tight for you. Most of the time I would actually stitch this and double it up one more time through that pass there, but I think this time I'm just going to leave it as is. So I technically have doubled up 2 of those Green Mesa, 2 of that green moss, 2 of that Green Mesa, 2 of those green moss down there too. So I'm just gonna get these cords all on the same playing field. So I've got the green that stops right here at the same point, but my Green Mesas are kind of on the same side here. So I want to stitch this through and double up this cord one more time. That'll put it on the left, and then I can cut and burn everything off from here. So put that needle back on, go underneath that singular green moss, be careful with the tension on threading cords through. That needle will come through pretty quick on you if you're not paying attention. So I just pull all those cords to get that braid pretty tight. And you know, not always is it going to look absolutely perfect. I mean, right in here you can kind of see just maybe a little bit of flaw of how those cords rotated through. You're going to get better with practice the more that you kind of see how those cords go through there. But we're also going to put a decorative knot right over the top of it. So that's some of the nice parts about paracord, is that you can sometimes easily hide any mistakes or flaws that you've created. So at this point, I don't need this lacing needle anymore. I'm going to cut and singe off these extra cords. So I start with the one toward the bottom of the point where they come out there. So I'm going to cut that moss off first. And burn and singe this. Again, if you accidentally kind of melt alongside the cords, it's going to be easy to cover up. But just be careful of where that flame is, where your other cords are, and where your fingers are. And then I'll cut Green Mesa off here. I cut it pretty close to the braid, probably not quite a 1/4 inch, but maybe just a little bit under. I don't want to be too entirely close to it, because as the cord melts, the more it's gonna shrink down toward the braid. And sometimes you can't really get a good singe on it if it's too close. So then we'll cut off the moss on this side. And get sharper scissors. Oh man. Well, that's an embarrassing dull pair of scissors. But it's also real life, so. And then I'm just gonna pop this out for this last piece. I don't really like to have the scissors super close to that piece, that middle piece, because it kind of inhibits my ability to get close to that braid. So I burn that down till it's darker, kind of bubbling. Then I use my scissors just to kind of saw that fusion down. So that's what it should look like so far. Sometimes I'll kind of take a cutting board or something to just kind of roll this out a little bit as well. I do that more so with the Turk's head knot that we'll be putting over the top of it, but if I feel like this is a little bit lumpy, I'll do it at this point too. So now that you have the wrist strap, we'll do that Turk's head knot on the other video. So go find that part 2 and we'll finish it up together.